Welcome to the Tech Pathfinder podcast, where we explore the impact of technology on the people in your workplace. Hello and welcome to the Tech Pathfinder podcast, where we explore the impact of technology on the people in your workplace. I'm your host, JP, and I help businesses get the most out of their technology through the engagement and the support of their people. In today's episode, we're going to explore how you can enable better outcomes for HR in your organization through the strategic executive alignment of your people strategy. The evolution of HR's role within the organization over the past decade has seen it take its rightful place at the executive table and be the powerhouse function that it can be to help set up businesses with their structures across the organization. Far from its origins, HR is now more than ever seen as a critical puzzle piece to the sustained success of a company. With this additional recognition comes a need for HR to challenge its status quo, operate with a more commercial mindset, and align more strategically and strongly with corporate objectives to ensure the greatest success. In today's episode, I'm going to speak with Bernadette Thomas on how HR can enable better executive engagement through strategically aligning HR with the broader executive function. We're going to talk about the importance of understanding commercial aspects of your business and how you can engage the key stakeholders in the organisation to get better outcomes for your HR strategy. Bernadette, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, JP.
Thanks for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
So, although I might sound a little bit English, I am Australian. I have been living in London for the past 20 years. So, working in HR in big multinationals, but also in small organizations. And more latterly, over the past 5 years, I've set up an HR consultancy. And that is very much to look at leadership effectiveness, to look at organizations, their design, their processes, and how, as you put it so succinctly, you align your business strategy with your people, with your culture to really grow your business. And I think it's fair to say that the past 5 years have been quite tumultuous, especially in the EU. So for us in the UK, there was a lot of change. And I think that you can see the evolution of that kind of happening also across APAC. And so I've also established a WellTech business, and I'm currently developing a menopause app.
You're keeping yourself busy. That's very, very much for sure. You touched on, I guess, the changes that we've seen in the workplace and the stresses that HR have felt over certainly the last 5 years. But and I don't want to labour the point that HR used to be someone who just dealt with the people problems. But really, it's in its infancy. HR, what was that? It was just it wasn't seen as important as it should have been, and certainly it's grown over the last, certainly in my time within HR over the last 10 or 12 years, that the perspectives of and I guess the viewpoints from an executive position is that HR needs to be there. The people aspect of the organization is critical. What have you seen, I guess, in that evolution of HR to finally get its seat at the table?
Yeah, so I think you're completely right. And I remember studying HR at university a while ago, not very long ago, but a while ago. And just that evolution from personnel management, which I detest the word personnel, because it is more than just about people. Mm-hmm. And if you think about then during the 90s, Ulrich model and bringing in that business partnering modeling into organizations really changed the face of HR. So we've seen centralized models and lots of centers of excellence being established, to even more so now decentralized models. And you have specialisms within HR, but I think that I love the way that HR is becoming more about people and culture. And we're looking at behaviors. And I definitely think that data has really helped to change the face of HR and really driven that change for us.
Yeah, HR's really got this, like if you sit and look at it from the outside, there's this really interesting trend where you see roles created out of its evolution. Data analysts are a good example of that, where HR data analysts just weren't a thing in the past, whereas now it's fairly common. fairly, medium to large organizations have an analytics team. Specialist roles are really quite common within HR. When we think about, I guess, the success of an organization, it does seem fairly reasonable to expect HR plays a really important role in that. What are the key things for you that I guess drive that importance?
So just carrying on from what you were just saying, I think there's something to be said for the HR management system. So any sort of HRIS that has come into play, really we've seen those grow over the past 10 years to help to evolve. Sorry, I've said evolve so many times. I'll try and change my language. That we've seen those changes around management information and being so much more data driven, so that we're able to look at what are some of the trends that are going on within our own organization, but also externally. So even if you take recruitment or talent acquisition, whatever you want to call it, the fact that you can look at what are market trends externally, but also our internal movement and what are the skills that we might require for our future. So HR are now able to not only have a look and analyze that data, but also, or data, as
It's all right. On this podcast, we are accepting and welcome of any pronunciation, mostly because I say both of them within the same sentence.
It.
So however you wish.
Good. So because of driving all of that data forward, we're also able to now predict a lot more. And I think that, so if you're looking at recruitment, it's amazing. We can use AI. We can be assessing CVs just based on AI. And that then pulls into things like diversity, inclusion, and equality. And you can look at language just through like AI and looking at that data as well. So I feel like that, and that's just one aspect of HR that has really been able to utilize that to improve your business outcomes. So, there's just so many links there around data, around HR information systems, and then also your business success.
Yeah, I think it's still largely untested on as far as like predictive analytics and sentiment AI and sentiment analytics is.
Yeah.
But the potential for that is incredible and a little bit scary, but also like from an organizational perspective, if you take a positive lens on it, it gives you that information, that perspective to act quick, be agile, make changes within the organizational culture and strategy to make sure that you are kicking your goals and that you are targeting things. If we think about, I guess, the shift to individuals in HR being more commercially minded, I think traditionally, and I keep using the word traditionally like it's the 1920s, but traditionally in HR, it's, I guess, the focus is on HR's perspective, HR's goals. But have you seen, I guess, certainly working with some of your clients and some of your experiences, that shift? Is it a difficult one for HR to make to have that more commercial mind and to think more strategically?
The really short answer is no, it's not difficult to shift to that. What I've seen that was really quite forward thinking. About 10 years ago, I was working in a global organization and the HR director left and the commercial director, so her responsibility happened to be sales and marketing, put her hand up and said, I think I'm an amazing leader. I could take on the role of the HR director. And at that time, everyone kind of just looked and thought, what? That's absolutely impossible. But actually, having a really strong team around her, she was able to take on that role. And I mean, individually aside, just the fact that she came in and said, all of these aspects around our business, you as HR business partners and you in the team can really learn from understanding every element of the business. So don't just be isolated in your role as maybe an HR business partner for sales and marketing, for example, but you could, in any organization, have a look at understand what a finance spreadsheet looks like, understand what a P&L looks like, understand, so that you can then have those conversations with your leaders around any aspect of the business. And you can talk about, well, I know that, for example, product are looking at how they can improve on a certain aspect of the software development. And so they're looking at how they might bring in OKRs. Like, let's just say that as an example. You might be talking to your finance director and say, or CFO, whoever they are, I know that we're doing that over there. It might not be suitable right now, but we could trial it in one certain part of our business and look at how we bring in OKRs into the business. So really understanding what is going on and having a pulse across the entire business, that helps significantly. But also, I think there's things like just being well read generally. And you don't have to be reading the newspaper. I don't mean it like that, but listening to podcasts, being involved in political discussion, just knowing what's going on in the broader society can really, really help your own understanding for your business. So who are your competitors? Even just knowing that information can just change the conversation that you're having with a leader. And there's so much information available for us at our fingertips now that it's very, very easy to find out that information. So another example, so today, last week actually, there was an announcement from the Australian government that they were going to be having an inquiry into menopause and perimenopause and the impact that has on the Australian economy and workplaces more specifically. And as an HR person, that's in your interest to know that information. What are we then doing as a business to be menopause supportive? So that's just one example of how just knowing that information, you can bring that back into your business and say, you know what, there is going to be a push about this in the future. And being ahead of the game could help us to be more of an employer of choice. So therefore, we put ourselves out there to be a menopause supportive business that's going to then attract more people. What else could it do for our business if we do become more menopause supportive? And, even if it's just an interest that you might have within your own community, what else is going on outside of your community that might be driving some change that you could bring into your business?
Yeah, that was kind of the angle that my head went to around, I guess, a lot of these parts of the organization. HR generally has a level of understanding already because they're building their EVP for the recruitment aspects of the organization, or for just maintaining company culture and maintaining engagement across the organization. So there is already a level of understanding of maybe not the competitors, but understand like what it is we do as an organization. Understand, maybe not specifically who our customers are, but broadly who our customers are, because we know that maybe our developers have to have experience in certain areas or certain capabilities. So it's not too far of a stretch to take that and I guess go that one step further and I guess be inquisitive, be exploratory on, and that menopause example is a really good one where it's something that, take myself as a consultant. I don't have any organizations who are working with me specifically for that, but being aware of what's coming up from a legislative perspective, from a cultural discussion perspective, like that's pretty key. I've been at a couple of events in the last few weeks where generational differences within the organization. How do you approach and engage different generations within your organization? How do you do that from a gender perspective, from a cultural background perspective? Like all of these things are kind of really critical to being successful in executing your job at any level. But when we're talking about, I guess, stepping up onto more strategic thinking about the organization, I guess the focus tends to be around what's important for HR, whereas now there's a shift to understanding the strategic objectives of the organization and then building your strategy and aligning that to that strategy. Because I think probably the best experience for those who are in HR who aren't on the executive at the moment, the closest experience you would have had is putting forward a request for a HR system or a platform or a new piece of technology, putting forward a business case to the executive, and it's either gone really well and you've got the budget and got the approval, or it's fallen flat on its face. And I think you probably be able to attest to this as well. It's about understanding the language that other people in the organization speak. So, being able to speak, as you said, understand P&Ls, understand how finance talk, what's their focus, what's their priorities. Can you talk to, I guess, the benefits from a HR and a people perspective in I guess being able to modify your storytelling based on your audience, really, and particularly an executive audience?
Yeah, so I think there's so many things that you've just said.
Sorry,
That I was like,
once I got on a roll, I couldn't stop.
I really think that there's something to be said around one, just understanding where your business is going and not seeing yourself as separate. So again, not being I'm the HR person, I'm the person who just is here to talk about people plans of the business. Really understanding the whole business. And you also touched on before around like understanding your external customers or your internal customers and understanding the market that you work in. I actually think that's really key. I think that they can really differentiate you and drive your business because you are given a seat at the table. It's then up to you to play that role of being at that level, at that strategic level. And then really understanding, okay, so now I know where our business is going. What are the behaviors that we want to exemplify? What are some of those, who are some of those role models that we might want to call out? And taking people on that journey, that becomes part of the storytelling, right? So understanding all of those elements of where your business is going is only going to really help you to create that story, to take people on that journey, because that is how you really impact change. That is how any sort of change journey is going to be successful, is by taking people and engaging others on that journey as you go. But if they don't buy into what you have to say because you're only talking in one dimension, that's not going to help you to gain their trust. And also it's not going to help the business to change or to drive anything forward. So I think there's something there very much around, as you said, storytelling, to be able to engage others and also to help other people to change some of their own language around the story that they're telling other people.
Yeah, I think for the most part, if you do shift your narrative, not to suit the audience, in that sounds like you're manipulating the story itself, but just I guess focusing on what's important for the person that you're talking to, something that they're that's going to spark their interest, that's going to what are they focused on as a CEO, what is her focus on within the organization, what she's trying to achieve, certain metrics, trying to increase sales, trying to reduce costs. That's the important thing for them. Say finance is probably very similar. Maybe sales as the focus is customer engagement and brand reputation, and marketing comes into that. So just understanding those perspectives, I think, has a really good, will have a really positive impact on that communication that you have, and builds much greater rapport.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm semi laughing here because there's something to be said around humans and our need to feel like we're a certain status. And I know that there's a lot of work done in the neuroscience community around status. And there was some research that came out really recently that said everybody cares about their status. There is so much to be said for having a conversation with one of your leaders and saying, well, you know what they're doing over there in marketing? They're doing this. And that really drives that competitive nature in people. So when you as an HR person can go into one of your leaders and really know what else is going on, so you have that pulse on all of the business, across the whole business, I think that just helps you to feel like their trusted advisor. And that trusted advisor is what they're looking for to take them on that journey. Like you're going to be that person with them that they'll keep coming back to. Well, what else is happening over there? Tell me more about this. And yes, it might be their peer, but there is really something about, oh, well, I need to be doing that if they're doing that, that drives some of that competitiveness, but also can help you to be better at your job.
Have you ever come across a scenario where whether it's yourself and we won't name names, or a client that you've worked with have gone headfirst into trying to engage with the executive, trying to understand the culture objectives, and are just getting roadblocked, getting is there a circumstance, I guess, where this doesn't work, where you've got old school thinking that likes to keep HR in a particular box and leave them there?
Yeah, definitely. And there are certainly, I mean, I'm going to use your word before, traditional organizations that do still really see the role of HR is just to be the policy police. And unfortunately, you might have a leader within that business who really wants to change the business, and there are others dragging their feet. And, I can think of multiple examples where you have I'm trying to, talk around some of the anonymity here, but you might have some major investment into your business in a certain part, and another leader does not agree with that and doesn't want that to happen. So they are becoming and they're creating that blockage. And you might be their HR leader that has to have that conversation with them. And I think that's when having multiple skill sets as an HR person, i.e. coaching, is one that's really great, because then you're not telling somebody, you're actually asking questions and getting them to think about their own behaviors and what they want to change around their own behavior. That's going to help them to either come on board or say, do you know what, it's not for me. And that's okay too. Having that conversation is your job as part of the engaging with that leader and helping them to develop their own capability and skill set. But sometimes recognizing that the future of this business is not where I see myself, and that's okay.
Yeah, being able to understand that and I guess see the pictures on the wall, the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Even if I think if you take out people related scandal, I think if you went to the HR person of any organization that's ever had a scandal, they knew about what was going on before everyone else. So they could see the writing on the wall, and it's because they're tapped into what's happening in the organization. So leveraging that knowledge, that engagement with the organization. And I love that point around approaching conversations from a coaching perspective, particularly when you've got leaders. It's very difficult. Well, it's certainly from what I've seen, it's very difficult to have conversations with managers of all levels, of all skill sets, of all level experience. Someone's going to feel like they're being condescending, and someone's going to feel like they're being spoken to in a condescending way. It's at one point or another, not with all conversations, but it's a very difficult line to tread when you're giving advice to someone who probably doesn't expect to be getting it, or doesn't expect, or doesn't have enough respect for the person that they're getting that advice from. So building that communication skill, that coaching skill, is really important. I think you mentioned earlier on around data and analytics, the importance of understanding that, and how, particularly in a tech sense, understanding what's our outcome, what are we trying to achieve, and it might be a board report or a standard WGEA reporting that we need to provide. Like, yes, that's the metric that we need to provide, but how do we then get to that point? Where are we capturing the data? How are we capturing the data? Is the data accurate? And that's not necessarily like, database hygiene isn't something that you'll see on an HR job ad on Seek, but it's really important. It's a really important skill set that most HR professionals have to a degree. Working on those skill sets, understanding how those sorts of things play out, give you that better understanding, so you can tell better stories. You can, have that communication with the executive.
Yeah, I think you're so right. There's something about being able to say, what's the so what about this data we're looking at? Okay, great, you're giving me management information. And I think that's where we've been able to take it in the past 5 years or so, is say, right, we know what this is saying. We know what the data is telling us. Okay, yeah, so we've got an increase in our sickness absence. So what? Well, actually, let's dig into this a little bit more. We have an increase in sickness absence around, and I'm only going to use this as an example just really briefly, but around women who are in their 40s plus. Well, hold on. Do we need to be thinking then about like what might be going on for that age group and that bracket? So if you can start digging into the data and looking at, okay, we might also have really low engagement across this layer of the organization. What is going on for this layer of the organization? Well, they don't feel like they're getting valued. They don't feel like they understand what the strategy of the business is. And they're not seeing it being role modeled. So, what's their so what? What do we do about it? And that, I think, is where you as an HR professional can really bring in your knowledge and be able to say, hey, I know that we've got X going on over here. We're looking at this data. This is different from another part of the organization. What is really going on here? Let's dig a bit deeper. Let's try and let's pilot something over here that might really support these people to become more engaged, or for reduction in the sickness absence, or we've got a bottleneck of knowledge in one particular part of the business. We need to bring in some more people who have that certain skill set, or develop our own talent.
I wanted to ask you one last question, and it's around, I guess, the direction that you see HR going, because we've kind of got to this point now where HR have a seat at the table, and I it's a funny term, a seat at the table, like they've just turned up and was like, oh, cool, we found your spot. Like where, as in reality, it's been a much longer journey than that. And it's also, HR have always been in the room, if not had a seat at the table. They've always been in the room at least. But I guess what are your predictions on the direction of HR moving in 10 years time, and its role within the broader executive and within the senior leadership in an organization?
I think that there's a lot to be said for culture and behaviors. I've seen a lot of work being done around psychology of an organization. So thinking about the element of psychosafety, psychosocial safety, psychological safety, and really building out and improving behaviors within organizations. I also think there's something around being just far more commercially minded, and having the ability to do that as well, just based on our having everything at our fingertips now through data and our ability to look at data. And I think there's just so much more to be said around just understanding organizational effectiveness, understanding how to change and navigate leaders through that change cycle. I think you said about having a seat at the table, and this doesn't just go for HR leaders, and it doesn't go just for HR professionals, but anyone who is given that seat at that table has to take it. And it's not, you don't just have to sit there and be quiet, but have the information and really prepare yourself for those conversations. And I think the more that we as HR professionals can really be prepared and armed and understand what the business needs, the more that we will have the ability to speak at that table. So yeah, okay, we've got the seat, but you've got to take it up, and you've got to be owning it as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's where your own research, your own engagement, your own learning is really important. But something that I think is really undervalued is the networking aspect, is building a community around you of like-minded, skilled, and admirable people who you can learn from, whether it's colleagues at other organizations that are also experiencing similar challenges, coaches and consultants that can work with you on certain skill sets, but building that community, building that network around you is critical to I guess leveling up and going beyond just sitting at the table.
Yeah, and I think there's something about we don't know what the future of work looks like. I certainly think that fractional working will become more and more common. And that's something then for HR professionals to really think about how does that then impact on our operating models? How does that impact on our ways of working? But what a great opportunity for us to be looking at. Well, if you've got people who are competing professionally in sports, they are going to have a load of knowledge that they're not going to be competing 100% of their working week. So if you're able to bring them into your business, but also able to see it as more of a fractional employment basis, that's brilliant. Or just understanding a product lifecycle or services lifecycle. And if you know that within your business, that you're at any one point in time, a team is going to be more valuable to the organization than another team. What about having a bench strength? Like, what does that look like? So really thinking about our operating models and future ways of delivering to the outside world, I think is great. You then can bring in elements of well-being. You can really look at high-performing teams and keeping your business at a peak performance, but that doesn't always mean the same people. So you're rotating your teams over, and then you give people time to replenish. And that looks completely different from a 35-hour week or 40-hour working week. Whatever that might look like to your organization, I think that there's this, I feel like it's so exciting, and there's so much potential for how we evolve and how we deliver our work in the future.
I told you we were going to get stuck down a rabbit hole. I just on that fractional working thing, and it's you see a lot of the studies that come out around 4-day working weeks as an example, and that one I think that one gets a lot of media attention because it sounds amazing, and it's a generalist approach where I think the key of fractional work is that one size isn't going to fit all, and understanding not only the best ways of working for the individuals working for you, but for your customers and for your output that you're trying to achieve. And you think about that paired with the way that people work. Take someone who might be neurodivergent. They and this is something that I explored recently around. You've heard the term "eat your frog"? So as a productivity, I guess, recommendation, it's the idea of doing the hardest thing that you have to do in the day, doing that first, because otherwise you spend all day fretting and worrying about it. And I used to try and eat my frog and try and do that thing that was difficult right up front, but because of the way my mind works, and as with these things, you learn more about yourself as you get older. But because of the way my mind works, I couldn't eat all the way frog, because I get halfway through eating the frog, halfway through the task, and I wasn't getting a dopamine hit. I was getting distracted. I was getting it was painful because I started the day on something hard and unfun. So now I've learned, okay, well, start the day with some quick wins, get them out of the way, get the dopamine hit, get that to work. Make sure you're moving around. Make sure you're not sort of that you're hyper focusing on the right things. Check yourself, like all these little things that I'm doing for myself to get the most out of me as an individual. Now, the exciting part is taking that at an organizational level and understanding, like, and I think the biggest roadblock for that for organizations is going to be moving to an outcomes based focus rather than time. And I think the call for everyone to come back into the office that we've seen from some organizations is proof that people still think that presence is all that matters. But I know for certain that I've worked 38-hour weeks, and I've done the 38 hours worth of work. I've done what I needed to achieve based on the focus time that I've got, the amount of work done. So it is really exciting, but at the same time there's going to be this this push and pull between traditional values of what working is, understanding where we could go. But the potential, if an organization can capture that, consider all of those inputs, and it's almost like having a really fine-tuned working engine that with very little tolerances, everyone's working at 100% when they've got 100% energy, and when they're not, you take the foot off the gas and let it breathe a little bit, and let give people space. And that's so important, particularly from a psychological safety perspective.
Oh, you're so right. And I think there's something about controlling behaviors that will hopefully go away sooner rather than later. They won't. It will take quite a while, and probably not in our lifetime. But I do think that there is a demand for changing the way that we work. And I would go even further than outcomes based to be more around value driven. So like, what is the value of the work that I'm doing? Because you might hit a certain outcome that you're trying to hit, but who is determining whether or not that's adding value then to the organization? Especially if we still go down the whole annual appraisal route, or looking at performance in a really static way, and not iterating on performance. I really, really love what digital technology, whatever you want to call it, teams are now doing to how we work. And I think that we are only going to see changes that are helpful to really aligning with and being in parallel with how we naturally as human beings work, how we operate, how we recover, how we rest. I mean, if you think about well-being as a topic, sleep is the best drug for every single problem. But yet, how many of us compromise on our sleep on a daily basis? So just thinking about, as an organization, your duty of care to every single person within your organization, what could that look like? I just think there are so many data points that we need to be mindful of. And luckily, science is on our side, because there's so much research going into this and looking at organizations, organizational behavior, individual behavior within organizational behavior. I just think it's really exciting time.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to, and I hope you're wrong about it not being in our lifetime. It's certainly not. I think you're right in that it won't be the norm, but I think we'll start to see pockets of it evolving.
We're already seeing pockets of it. Don't get me wrong. I think though that there are still too many big companies that it's so ingrained in their psyche that until some of these smaller businesses, startups, and, I'm talking startups over the past 20 years or so, 10, 20 years, take over the economy. I think that's all I mean, is that there are too many large traditional organizations that it's so ingrained, and that trust element just isn't there, because, and this comes back to HR, the way that we incentivize and reward people is all based on individualism. And so the more that you're promoting individual reward, the more you're promoting individualized behavior. And therefore, it's not for the common good. So think about team bonuses, think about team incentives. And sure, of course, recognize individual performance. That's not at all what I'm saying. But if everyone is based on individual things, then you are only driving individual behaviors.
Yeah.
You're not driving organizational change. You're not driving a team-based culture. You're not driving collaborative behaviors.
I love it. I'm really excited now. I'm going to go and start the business of the future based on that solely. Bernadette, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I really appreciate it. And to the benefits of networking, you and I only met a few weeks ago at a networking event, connected, and here we are. So definitely can vouch for that. Thanks so much for taking the time out today.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode is proudly supported by Rosby Consulting. Rosby partners with organisations to help them identify their business strategy, how they'll deliver it, and achieve their goals. They work with leaders and their teams to identify the best approach, ways of working and operating models to be successful. Rosby specialises in business transformation, culture change and organisational effectiveness. They combine their knowledge of workplace culture and well-being to partner with leaders and their teams to drive growth through business and people strategy. They provide strategic consultancy, executive coaching, expert speakers, facilitators and educators, providing knowledge, insight and advice on people and culture, leadership, well-being and menopause. Rosby is on a mission to create a better employee experience for everyone. For more information, visit rosbyconsulting.com. Thanks to the team at Rosby for supporting this podcast.